welcome. Joining me, Pete, on my 65th birthday today.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, Pete. And I apologize for my late arrival online, but it is lovely to have Pete McKee joining us, a significant Sheffield artist, a familiar figure on the landscapes and streets of Sheffield. Wherever you go, Pete's work is there. You will know him, of course, and Graham. I know Pete from the work that Red House Gallery, of course, is put on in Harrogate, so closer to where Graham and I are based. And Red House, it's much cherished, Pete, the work that's done there. Maybe actually, Pete, tell us how that relationship came about with Red House.
It's an interesting one. My relationship with them has gone back a long way. It's
Mm.
been with them for quite a few years now, and I think I was just basically searching galleries in the local area, and I really liked the cut of the jib, and we got on really well. And I think I was very privileged and thankful that it took me on and represented my work in Harrogate. And from there, we've had a lovely relationship. Now, I
Mm.
think that's how it goes, unless my memory's completely askew, and Richard can update me on a better version than that. I
Well,
think that's
I've
how it
I've I've
goes.
met Pete. I've met Pete at least twice at Red House in Harrogate, and once was as long
Yes.
ago as 2014. Because Pete has
Yeah.
kindly come to Harrogate a few times with these great shows. I remember Third Crackling Pop really well when you brought a record shop. So the inside the
Yeah.
gallery turned into a record shop
Oh,
with
yes.
proper record racks. But all the albums were they looked like they're real albums, but they're all artwork done by you, and it was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was my celebration of vinyl and record shops.
Mm, mm.
I grew up working in record shops as well. So I worked at HMV for 10 years on and off, and various other independent record shops as well. So it's kind of in my blood. And I just wanted to celebrate that for that particular show.
Apart from Red House Gallery, I mean, my house in Harrogate is pretty small. But if you go in the living room, I've got the Cancel Skies book. If you go
Ah,
up the stairs, the top of the stairs has the two framed Pete McKee prints, one of a cool besuited mod, and one of your reinterpretation of Oasis front cover for Definitely Maybe as penguins.
oh yeah,
And
definitely
then the
Penguin.
kitchen's got a Pete McKee postcard on the notice board.
Lovely.
And then the bedroom's got in my vinyl collection, it's got like Pete McKee vinyl sleeves to keep your records in. And then when I go to my favorite cafe in Harrogate for a coffee, Bean and Bud, it's got like your prints for the Warp films, including Submarine,
Ah,
framed
right.
on the wall. It's like I can't get away from Pete McKee in Harrogate.
You should try living in Sheffield.
Yeah, I mean, that strong association, Pete, with Sheffield, I mean, that is strongly central there. But for example, the tour that's coming up and starting at Leeds Broodnell Social Club from the 25th of April through to the 100 Club London on the 24th of May, this is taking the boy with a leg named Brian. This is taking what was a Sheffield exhibition, of course, a record running Sheffield exhibition, a year length exhibition, Pete, of course,
Yeah.
uh, in Sheffield. And this is taking this now on the road and accompanied with the Everly Pregnant Brothers the gigs. Tell me and tell Graham, Pete, how this tour came about. It's not a conventional tour, if you like. I mean, we know how gigs work, but actually, for an artist to do this is really interesting. Going around the country
Hmm.
with an exhibition and with a musician attached to it. How did this come about?
Well, the Everly Pregnant Brothers are a band that I formed nearly 20 years ago, and it was as a joke or a dare and a laugh, really. When all we were ever going to do was play uh, parties,
Yeah.
just to bore people to death with our ukuleles because they were quite new and original back then. And so me and my mate were going to do that, and then it just spiraled out of control, and we become a proper band, and we play festivals and all sorts, and we have a really good time with it, and that's all it's ever is. It's a bit of fun, and so we'll play everywhere and anywhere we can. But to combine that, and I try and keep those separate, to be honest with you, the band
Mm,
and my artwork, but I always view my art more akin to being in a band than I do of being an artist. So I see my paintings as songs and my exhibitions as albums. And I've
mm,
always treated it that way. Even before then, and I was a cartoonist. The process to try and become recognised is very similar to being in a band where you make a demo tape, you send it off and you up a record label will like you and sign you. And it's the same with being a cartoonist. You come up with ideas and gags and you send them off to various publications
Mm.
or publishers, and you hope that they have the same musical taste or the same taste in humour. And if it doesn't work, you get a rejection letter like you would do with a EMI sending you one saying thanks, but guitar bands are no longer popular. And so that's the same sort of theory. And so I've always treated it that way. And it was nice then just to kind of do the full circle and be almost like a band and go on tour with my art in music venues. So it was nice just to try and do something different because I very rarely actually exhibit in proper galleries. I do it from time to time and it's great when I do, but normally my shows tend to be in self-funded warehouses that I've found acquired for a week or a weekend and built a show around that. So that tends to be the standard formula for me.
Mm.
And so this is kind of an example of that, where I'm doing these little pop-up shows and just taking like the highlights of the Boy with a Leg Named Brian show and exhibiting those within this environment. And then hopefully in the evening, people will follow on from seeing the artwork in the daytime and come and see the band at night and have a good laugh.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the book, the book that goes with the tour, sold out already, of course, Pete. The exhibition that originally was in Sheffield, was it always set to be for the year, or was it one of those situations where it kind of grew its own legs and was expanded as it went along?
No, it was always set to be a year, and that's sort of like a happy accident, to be honest with you.
Mm.
I originally did a show at the other gallery in Sheffield, which is the Millennium Gallery,
Yeah.
but I hired one of their rooms out and put my own show on called Don't Adjust Your Mindset. And it was just after COVID. And it was about basically our lives on social media and how
Mm.
destructive it is. And so I had this big show there and I self-financed that. And that was only on for kind of like a few days. And the numbers that went through the door kind of pricked up the ears of the Sheffield Gallery people. And they realized that they kind of wanted a show by me later on down the line. So we agreed to that. And because of financial constraints now with councils and stuff, they can't have more than one show a year. And so I was a beneficiary, the first one to actually have a show
Yeah.
that's went on, so rather than 6 months, it went on for 12 months. And I think both ourselves and the museum benefited from that because obviously we ended up with about 150,000
Yeah.
people through the door, which is fantastic, absolutely brilliant. But it also meant that the show itself had to be entertaining and
Mm.
sustain that 12-month period, as far as I was concerned anyway.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
tried to make it broad and varied and family friendly as possible.
Great.
There must be something in this, but when I was trying to when I was thinking about Pete, and I wasn't thinking too long about Pete, I hasten to add, the phrase that's popped in my head was the hardest working man in showbiz. Then I thought, wait a minute, no. He's an artist. He's an artist. What the hell am I thinking? So
Mm.
there is something rock and roll about you, something that, although you're a very good artist and a very successful artist, goes way beyond art into music and all different forms of culture. You're like
Yeah.
if it doesn't sound like a really pretentious word, you're like a polymath,
Well,
whatever that means.
it's an obsession. I think to be creative, it's something that I can't stop.
Mm.
It takes over your soul and your inner being in a way, and the I'm just constantly compelled to create something, whether it's artwork, whether it's writing songs, daft songs for the brothers, playing my musical instruments, or whatever, or, anything that I can do, street art, for instance, I will try and be as varied as possible with it, so it would be as entertaining as well. I kind of feel like I want to have people have the money's worth with me in a sense. I'm an
Mm.
old-fashioned working class kid, and I feel like graft is the key to success in a sense. I can't rest on my laurels at all, and I'm only ever like a few weeks away from working at Tesco's again. I'm at the mercy of people's fashion
Mm.
and pockets because I work in a luxury sector. Not everybody can afford art, not everybody wants to have art on the walls. So I continually graft hard and try and keep the myself in the narrative just to make sure that people don't get bored of me and, and go elsewhere. So it's one, it's a compulsion. Another, it's a desire not to go back to Tesco's.
Murals are part of that, of course, as well, Pete.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, that the cost of art, and interesting, actually, the exhibitions that are are free to go between 12 and 5. But equally, murals are in public spaces, and
Yeah.
we've seen them. We'll come on to Sheffield Wednesday at some point, but not. Let's keep it happy for the moment. But
Yeah.
in Leeds, the power of murals, Marcelo Bielsa murals, etc. They've taken on a whole momentum in cities of murals. And I wonder how you feel about it, because they are, in their own way, they're historic, but they're also of now, but they
Mm.
capture the culture in the city. And they seem to me to be a really important life force murals.
Yeah, I am absolutely a massive fan of street art. Because it's a beautification in some respects, and it's free. It's nobody's paying for this. I mean, obviously, um, someone may commission an artist to do that, but the people that are viewing it on a day-to-day basis, going to
Mm,
work or going to the shops, it's there to be part of their lives and part of the fabric of the community, in a
mm.
sense. And if it's done well, it's nothing but a positive force. And you take Bristol, for instance, and obviously Banks's
Yes.
amazing rise, but for tourism, it's immense for that
Mm,
city. And if
mm.
you can corner that market in a like Leeds, um, Manchester, Liverpool, all those big cities have got a healthy street art scene, and so Sheffield has been part of that for a very long time with
Mm,
Phlegm and Kid
mm.
Acne and
Yes.
Phonographic and Rocket and
Yeah.
all these guys who are now internationally renowned.
Yes.
20 years ago, they were filling the streets up with their street work,
Mm,
and I was very, influenced by their power, and I wanted to kind of be within their footsteps really with my street art, because
mm.
it's a great calling card for artists as well,
Absolutely. Mm,
and it can't be ignored. And obviously, young kids today see that as well. They understand it, and that's why one of the major art movements of the 21st century is street art
mm.
rather than anything else that hangs in galleries. And it's important, it's vital.
Absolutely. Graham.
Although Pete is very associated with Sheffield, if someone said to me, name a great modern contemporary British artist who is not in his 60s, 70s, or 80s, I would suggest Pete because you're a master of colour and line. You're a bit like if Picasso or David Hockney was asked to do a seaside postcard with no smut and no cheesy gags, they'd come up with Pete McKee, is what would happen. So
Well, it's,
I think you're to me you're a quintessentially British artist and Yorkshire artist of real standing, way beyond Sheffield.
well, thank you for that. I really appreciate your comments there. And it's something I've tried to strive for is some kind of recognition, not just in Sheffield, but out and about. And what I try to relay is obviously my work's quite nostalgic. I immerse
Mm,
myself in the culture of my childhood in the 70s growing up, and then obviously the influence of music and fashion. And that plays a massive part to my art and the stories that come from the people around me while I grew up. And so I'm hoping that I'm telling the story of the working class rather than just the working my life in Sheffield. So a lot of my themes, a lot of my stories in my paintings are universal,
mm,
even though
Mm.
that, but obviously people from Sheffield know I'm from Sheffield, so their instant assumption is that when I do a painting of a bloke in a pub, they're already trying to work out which pub it is. But actually, it's quite often they're just generic, and it's the story that's the key to it all, really, basically. So that tends to be my raison d'etre. Really, is I'm more of a storyteller than an artist, but it's important for me to tell the story of the common person, really. And one of the proudest things that I have about what I do is that I'm bringing people that don't necessarily would go into an art gallery come to see my
mm,
work
mm.
and introduce them to that concept of gallery exhibitions. And so that's one of the proudest things that I have about what I do, and also the encouragement that schools have in my local area to teach
Mhm.
my artwork, because the story basically of where I come from and where I'm at this moment in time is inspiring for kids growing up on council estates, and they love to sort of teachers love to push that. And I think, I'm really proud of that, really proud that I'm hoping to encourage maybe future artists.
Mm. Pete, a
You do
hugely
a lot of
part. Oh,
lone
Graham, go on.
figures.
Go on, Graham.
You do a lot of lone figures, and
Yeah,
although your art is always warm and warming, it's also quite honest. There's nothing false about any of the figures or the situation they're in. And there's almost something, and I'm going to get really pretentious here, just to upset you. There's almost something existential about a lot of your lone figures, and no matter what the backdrop or no matter what the character of the figure is.
yeah, yeah. I like to put a lot of pathos. There's humour in some of them. The humour normally comes
Mm,
from the text, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
pathos within that work, and that was something that I kind of figured out was an essential ingredient. Having looked at Hopper's solo works,
mm,
his studies on solitude,
yeah.
and you can't help but have an emotion when you see any of his paintings. The women, his wife sat on the bed in the room looking out of the window. It's just
Mhm.
incredibly powerful,
There's
and it was
also an
something that.
endless mystery. There's an endless mystery to Hopper painting that you
Oh
can never
well, yeah.
solve.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't you think you know everything about that person because
Mm,
of how he's painted that them in that cafe situation or in the bedroom in the motel, and you think you know a lot, but you know nothing as well at the same time.
yeah,
You
yeah,
get the
yeah.
sense
I,
of what they
yeah.
feel because you felt it in your past, but what's brought them to that moment, you've no idea, and that's intriguing.
I mean, that's the nature of a frozen image, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah,
Um, Whoever looks at it, is the word unfreeze? Yeah, unfreezes it. And the story starts again. I mean, Girl with a Pearl Earring would be, of course, a classic example of the fact that,
yes, yeah,
Tracy Chevalier made a story about that. So,
yeah,
and that can happen with any image. That also can happen, Pete, with a mural on a wall, of course. Whoever
yeah,
sees it, they can come alive. But they also, what's interesting, as you say, is they have a pre-life and then an afterlife as well as
yeah.
the still moment. And people do want to try and work those things out. I think it's fascinating as humans. We want to not necessarily complete the story, but we want to take that story on.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's something with my work as well. It becomes a bit more personal because there's not a great deal of facial detail in my work.
Mm.
Is that the you can assimilate quite quickly and easily people around you. So you can see an old lady in my paintings can either be someone's nan or grandma or their mother, and that often happens. And I know that because anecdotally, because people tell me quite often certain paintings remind them of themselves or their parents and stuff, and that's really sweet.
Absolutely.
You're so productive, Pete, and you've done so many different exhibitions. I've
Yeah.
seen quite a few, but not all of them. But I saw one recently, or not that long ago, Viva la Nan, and
Oh
I was
yeah.
really surprised because I found it quite moving, and
Oh yeah.
it wasn't just good art because it was black and white line drawings in the main, and you could see that this is a man who can capture things very quickly without much work. It was a light touch
Oh yeah.
the
Thank
whole
you.
time. But I
Yeah.
also it didn't just capture the characters of the individual grannies. I felt there was a lot of love and emotion in every line that you drew for that exhibition, more so than possibly any other one I've seen by
Well,
yourself.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I do. I love my characters. I love the people that I draw and paint. I never come at it by punching down. I always want to build my characters up. I want to, as in Viva la Land, I want Viva la Nan. I want to empower them. I want to. So if I'm painting working class characters, it's never of a from a position of like kind of not pity, but vindictiveness or anything like that. There's
It's not
nothing
judgmental.
critical.
You're on their
No.
side.
Yeah, always. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that that comes through with my work because that is something that I try to feel that I am genuine with what my subject matter is for sure because I've lived it, I understand it, and those people I have nothing but compassion and passion for because they live very tough lives. With you know, my parents did, and those people that still live on council estates, their lives are unbearably hard. You know, financially. You know, trying to find money for the lecky meter and stuff like that on a weekend and things. I've been there. I've had nothing but red letters coming through my letterbox and stuff. I'm wondering how I'm going to work this through and signing on kind of payday loan checks in money shops. But I went through a phase of doing that, so I appreciate poverty. I appreciate the grind of it, and so I would never look at any situation like that with anything other than with love.
The influence of Sheffield, Pete, on your work, and we could look at what might contrast with the influence of Leeds or the
Yeah,
influence of Bradford on Hockney or whatever. Um, but you capture Sheffield. I mean, I was only there for a year as a journalism college, but I know
right.
the city, not like you know the city, but I could only ever call myself really a visitor of the theatres and the football grounds and whatever. But you absolutely, to me, capture an essence of Sheffield.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
I think that's important in the work. And I think humour comes into that and pathos. You've touched on both of those. But how you think I mean, I don't know whether you see that, there's a responsibility in how you represent Sheffield, whether actually there's a kind of weight on your back about that or not.
Yeah,
Or am I overemphasizing that
I think
significance?
it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's 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 a in the history of art, artists historically have painted the area that they come from. So Salvador
Yeah.
Dali just painted the area that he lived in, and he was obsessed by that and its landscapes. But because Salvador Dali is well revered, his work is seen not as a critique on that landscape. They just people who
Mhm.
see that it's a painting, it's abstract, and it's got many things to talk about. But he
Mhm.
even stated is being quoted as saying that you can't be truly know yourself unless you know where you come from and the work that you paint. But then when it comes to contemporary artists like myself, then it can be almost like a dirty word that you're doing these local paintings. You almost get kind of like I think when I'm saying this, I mean I'm talking about say maybe like fine art critics, for instance. I know
Yeah.
I don't exist in
Oh
that
dear.
world, but
Mm.
I know that my kind of art is frowned upon. It's not classed as real, but my art
Pete,
affects.
sorry to interrupt there, would that be like how people to some extent treated L.S. Lowry?
Well, exactly. You got Lowry, then you've got the coal miner paintings as well, and
Yeah.
the
Oh,
northeast
yes. Yes.
paintings.
Yes.
They were talked about after their death, post,
Yes.
and
Yeah, there's even
revered
been
in
a play
in
about them,
space.
Pete, of course. Yeah.
Sorry.
Even been a play about the coal miner painters, of course,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's almost like the class as hobbyists, and they've taken it up. And then you got the Newlyn School, but and when it was probably
Yeah.
in its original form, wasn't necessarily seen as great art. But now, in retrospect, people love it. It's naivety, but it's never revered or critiqued positively in an artist's lifetime or rarely. And it's because it's working class and
Mm.
because it's a people story, and that doesn't suit fine art people. They need millionaires to want to buy it and to be exclusive, so that London galleries can charge £100,000 for a sketch or whatever. Then they need the exclusivity, and they don't want that kind of like common touch, because it's not a sellable commodity. So where I treat it like Beryl Cook or and just
Mm.
treat it as a novelty.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's like perfume companies make their products ridiculously expensive because they want that for some reason they want exclusivity, not for everyone to have it. I can't
Correct.
understand that. I can't understand that with art at all. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. I would
Yeah,
happily
Makes
see
it
work that
makes
I
them
liked.
money. It makes more money that way.
Well, there is an argument you can, you wouldn't apply that. Oasis sell loads of records, and no one says, oh no, that somehow that's wrong. Therefore, you should appreciate much more an artist that sells less than that, isn't as well. It doesn't. So I don't know why that should apply to art. I don't understand.
yeah. It is. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you could say, for instance, let's say that the Beatles' "Strawberry Fields Forever" is the greatest song ever written. It's a
Mm.
masterpiece,
Yeah.
but that was sold in its millions for like 50 pence
Yep.
or two bob or whatever.
Mm.
But it didn't diminish the fact that it is still a
Exactly.
masterpiece. But when
Exactly.
it comes to art, the goalposts move massively.
Indeed.
Mhm,
Indeed.
Yeah.
mhm.
Graham.
Well, my roots are in a properly working class town, a working class background in the petrochemicals town of Grangemouth in the
Right.
central belt of Scotland, where Ineos is used to be the BP. So Ineos bought it, and I still go back and I've seen the town change so badly over the last 30, 40 years,
All right.
and mainly because of the decline of the economy, change in the benefit system, and just change in general culture. And it's changed the people as well.
Right.
And but those people don't end up in any art, and they don't end up on TV programs or in books or in culture full stop,
Mm.
Yeah.
unless it's some trashy show on Channel 4 or Channel 5. And that's about it. But you seem to stand up for the exact opposite of that trend.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you say, the only time the working class are ever seen portrayed on in anything is like kind of poverty porn, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
don't pay, we'll take it away, kind of thing.
Mm.
And there's no kind of it's chastising poverty.
Mm.
But yeah, I try to. I mean, yeah, I can only tell the story that I kind of know in a sense. So my upbringing and my childhood was a very positive one, and the people and my brothers and stuff. I still, we love each other dearly,
Mm.
and that just comes through. Hopefully, in my work that I try to be passionate about that story. And I had a exhibition just after I'd had a liver transplant, the first show I did, and it was called "This Class Works," and it was
Mm.
about the working class, and it was about how the positivity about being working class and how it was the backbone of the society, and without that without the working class, you don't we don't exist as a country, as a force, because they're the people that are holding it all together. But is so that was a nice show, and that was kind of I did that one as a collaborative show as well, because I like to try and involve other artists whenever I can, and definitely help with my work as well. So if I ever need anything sculptural, I've got a sculptor that I know called Anthony Bennett, who's in Sheffield, but he's also works internationally, and it's great to be able to collaborate with other artists and video makers and stuff. And I like to share the love and show their brilliant skills off too.
I'm going to ask you a
Please.
cliched question here, Pete,
Oh yeah,
which is how you found your individual and idiosyncratic style. Because everyone goes, that's a Pete McKee work. And that seems to me to be with art, that's really one of the things that's essential is that individuality that makes someone say, well, you used the example earlier, Salvador Dali or whatever.
yeah,
We
yeah. I
know
mean that
Pete
is
McKee
yeah.
work. How did that happen?
Well, it started back from the original concept of how I wanted to make my living, and that was to be a cartoonist.
Yeah.
I grew up as a kid reading the Daily Mirror. Just before I went off to school, my dad had come in from night shift and chucked the Daily Mirror on the table, what he'd been reading on the bus home or in the
Mm.
dinner. And so I go straight to like the Perishers and Handicap. I'd
Yeah.
look at all
Yeah.
the panel gags, sacks and stuff.
Mm.
And I just wanted to be working in newspapers, drawing cartoons and do a
Mm.
strip cartoon. That was
Mm.
it. So for a while, I had to go at that, and I came up with strip cartoon characters and stuff like that. And one of them was in a very similar style to what I paint now. And then a few years later, it wasn't working out, and I was getting skinnier and skinnier, as I mentioned before, with all the red letters and stuff. And I thought, well, I need to move the goalpost a bit for myself and be going to fine art if I can. So I wanted a style that I could accomplish that because I'm not trained as an artist. I did an art foundation course in my late 20s after
Mm.
finishing work for HMV and I've worked in factories and stuff. And then I wanted to go full time into art, in some respect, go to an art college. So I did a foundation course, and unfortunately didn't get into art college. So I just said, right, let's become a cartoonist and do it on my own back anyway. So in
Mm.
that process, and a few years down the line, I did actually start. I was a cartoonist and got paid for it because I worked for the Sheffield Telegraph, which is a
Yeah.
local newspaper.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
did the sports cartoons every week there for 20 years.
Mm.
And I packed in recently when I went and had my liver transplant.
Mm.
So I was still working as a fine artist, but also doing this cartooning job as well on the side because I still love doing that. But anyway, so I'd come up with this character, which is very similar to how I paint now. But I realised that was the way for me into the art world. I couldn't do any artwork in a cartoon style that had a face that was recognisable as a cartoon face because then it just becomes too cartoony.
Yeah.
So I needed to simplify that face. So when this character came on and it was just a line and a nose, and it still spoke to me when I looked at it, it was looking straight back at me. I thought, wow, this is a way to go with this. So I just started painting in that style and trying to work out what the story narratives were going to be, whether it was going to be uh, paintings about my upbringing or people around me and stuff like that. So I was just finding my own feet, and I sold a few to mates, and that
Mm.
was obviously sweet of them to support me that way. But then I had an exhibition in a pub called the Washington just before Christmas, and I did about 24 paintings for it in because I just use emulsion paint and I just
Mm.
paint on boards like MDF board. And the emulsion paint dries really quickly, so you can't be too arty with it. So that's why the flat colours and the
Yeah.
black lines really work.
Mm.
And obviously that the characters, like I said, the faceless faces really
Yeah.
worked in my favour. And so when I started working on the narrative where they became quite like stories and people could relate to them. And that's when it started to build up slowly, but quite quickly. So I was working at Tesco's at the time while I was doing this exhibition. But within like a year and a half, I was able to pack in Tesco's and work full time as an artist because I'd sold enough paintings to
Yeah.
have a bit of money in my bank to cover the costs and see where it went. But that's where the style came from. Is was a deliberate move from cartooning into fine art, but
Yeah.
in a style that I could still do without it being too painterly, in a
Mm.
sense.
Mm. Graham.
I was just going to ask very briefly and gingerly how your health was, Pete, because
Yeah.
going on tour with Everly Pregnant Brothers, I'm guessing perhaps you're not going to be behaving like the Clash on tour.
Well, we can't help it. We can't help it. Like you're, well, we on stage we're full of energy and we really give it
Yeah,
110%. We have a good time on stage and we try and encourage the crowd to do so. I mean, there's a lot of sing along stuff and a lot of swearing and effing and jeffing. And we try to be as entertaining as humanly possible on stage. So I'm going to be absolutely knackered by the end of it. That's without a doubt.
yeah,
Fortunately,
I know because
the tour's
yeah,
every
yeah,
weekend, so we've got like 5 days to recover, hopefully.
I did notice with the
yeah, because
itinerary that there was
mm,
room for recovery.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Usually, as an artist, you go to the gallery for your exhibition. All you got to do is stand and chat,
Yeah,
and that's it.
well,
But
that's quite
you,
exhausting too.
yeah,
I'll be honest with you. Yeah,
yeah,
by
yeah.
the end of it.
But you're doing some serious work with a band
Oh
as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
doing the tour.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to be
yeah,
full on because I'm sure I'll get roped into the end of the show bits as well. Yeah, with the show
mm,
and talking to people, punters
yeah.
before sound check and things like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, so it's going to be full on, but it's going to be great to do. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm.
Graham,
And
what
you must
minutes
have.
have we got left?
Well, Pete must have played the Broodnell before in Leeds because we love the Broodnell. It's the best
Mm.
venue in the world. Well, maybe
Love it.
apart from the Lead Mill, but let's not go there.
Yeah.
No, the Brutenell's fantastic. It is.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah,
absolute gem. I really wanted to see the is it Angine de Poitrine at Brudenell, but it sold out in about four
yeah,
seconds, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
going to be a fantastic gig.
Mm.
But
Mm,
yeah,
mm.
so yeah, I love the Brudenell. It's the setup, and Sheffield would needs a Brudenell. I mean, we have
It
got a
does.
Yeah.
working man's club called the Crooks, and that's starting to put some
Yeah.
really good bands on up there. And that setup of using the kind of working men's club stage, it's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant concept.
No, it's been so nice to Pete come on because I feel like I know him and I don't, and his art is so brilliant, and everything he does is a joy. So it's a real pleasure to have had Pete on the show. I feel really privileged.
Likewise, Pete, thank you so much, and
Yeah.
enjoy the tour, Pete. And I'm glad to see as well, obviously, the gallery going well with the move in 2024 to the bigger gallery
Oh,
space.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Thank
that's
you.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.